Good evening, and welcome to the Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy. Today is April 7th, 2017, and I was awakened this morning by a call from a friend of mine to ask me what I felt about the Trump strike, the airstrike that Trump called against the Syrian airfield last night. And I missed it. I hadn't really looked at the news that closely, hadn't heard the radio, didn't watch television last night, so I didn't know about it. So I did a little bit of research this morning, and I felt a little bit better about it. The call that I got from my friend, he was very concerned. He thought it might be the beginning of World War III. He feared that Trump had sort of gone off the deep end, that it was an emotional response to the sarin gas attack that killed about 80 people a few days ago, a lot of them children. And what I'm going to do today is give you a couple of responses from Alex Jones, who's very close and really, I would say, the #1 commentator in the alternative media world. And I think it could be argued that he's now really right up there with some of the major news networks and deserves the respect and a good hard listen to, rather than getting the demonization that he is getting from the media, the liberal media, the left-wing media, that he's been getting over the last 6 months or a year. He used to be ignored. He's been on the air for almost 20 years, I think, and he just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more followers. And the people who he has on his show are very important figures, political figures, and people, commentators, and people who write books, and really top-level people who are dedicated their lives to studying this phenomenon that we live in, the world we live in, the culture, the politics, the military. So Alex Jones really does have a lot of information, has a very quick mind, and studies this stuff tremendously, and is really way more informed than your average journalist. He does a very good analysis, and it's reassuring. It doesn't look like it's going to be World War III. The spokesman for the Russian government has called this a provocation, which is not going to improve relationships between the United States and Russia, and especially since that relationship was not that good in the first place. But as you'll hear Alex Jones explain, what we're seeing right now is the reaction to a very important move that Trump has made, and a move that really Trump had no other choice but to make that decision, to do this, to bomb the airfield. What we have to remember is this is a limited response. Now, a lot of Republicans and supporters of Trump are very upset, or were, and maybe still are, I don't know. But this is what my friend said, that there are a lot of his supporters are very concerned because this is not what he said he was going to do. He said he wanted to stay out of military entanglements in the Middle East. And just last week, about 4 days ago, the Trump administration announced that the policy of regime change in Syria was off the books. It was off the table. It was no longer going to be operational. Then, 4 days later, in what appears to be a random or emotional response, he sends out almost 50 Tomahawk missiles and demolishes this airfield and kills about, I guess, 7 or 8 people. But what you find out is that the U.S. military actually informed Russia they were going to do this. So they got any personnel off the base. Now, that they had. Now, it seems odd to me that there were any casualties at all. But according to the Russians, some of the Tomahawk missiles did not strike the base. They missed the base, and apparently they must have done what they call collateral damage and killed somebody, some civilian who was close by, who was in the area, hit a house. I don't know what the details of this, but this is a signal. It's a message. It's a political statement that Trump actually sort of had to make, because he's being assaulted or bombarded or besieged on all sides by the media and the left, because they're saying he's soft on Russia, he's buddy with Russia, he's a Russian agent, his associates, his colleagues, his advisors are influenced by Russia. You know, they're saying, you know, Putin runs Trump and all this. And so now this goes a long way towards silencing his critics, because it says that I'm going to bomb and risk World War III with Russia in order to make a response that would be adequate to the threat imposed by Syria by this new gas attack. Now, Ron Paul has publicly said that this is a false flag, because it makes no sense that Syria, after this reassurance from the U.S. government that it was no longer in the crosshairs with the idea of regime change, that this is different, that only 4 days later that Syria would, for no particular reason, gas and kill a bunch of children. And this was because, according to the reports, they're mostly children who died. And Ron Paul says this makes no sense. This is clearly a false flag attack by the opposition, and there's been plenty of indications before that these previous gas attacks were also false flags. But apparently, Trump can't just go and say this is a false flag. What would happen with the media, with this effort? This would bolster what would happen with this effort to try to destroy his presidency and discredit him as a president, because they're saying, well, he's working for the Russians. Well, that would just create a whole new scenario with so much more ammunition for these critics. Now the critics are essentially silenced. This is over. The whole Russian thing, the investigations, all this has been eclipsed and put in the shade, and probably permanently, because of this act last night. So is it a half-cocked emotional response by Trump to bomb this airbase, or was this, as Alex Jones says, a very well thought out, genius move, Machiavellian, to create the kind of climate that will allow him to function as the president? So let's watch these couple of clips. They're about 20 minutes in total, and then I'll come back and we'll wrap it up.
In the last hour, as many as 60 sea-launched cruise missiles were fired from U.S. ships and hit a air base reportedly storing chemical weapons inside Syria under the control of Assad. Now, I've been critical of President Trump immediately, in just 24 hours, buying into this entire narrative that it was supposedly Assad that launched this chemical weapon attack on this village, because the al-Nusra / ISIS al-Qaeda rebels have been caught over and over again staging false flags. It's been admitted. Senator Rand Paul's talked about it. His father, Dr. Paul's talked about it. We've had reporters on the ground breaking the same thing down. But that separately said, I came to my own conclusion tonight. Then I talked to Dr. Corsi, who is a real expert and others, and then even saw it in the comments. There's a very good chance this is being done because the communist Chinese dictator, President Xi, is meeting tonight with Trump and just arrived. And it's a very, very serious message to them over the North Korea peninsula. And that issue is even way bigger than this. Now, again, I don't want to be Machiavelli, but this gives Trump major leverage over Democrats who are, again, trying to claim he's soft on Assad and soft on Russia. This also comes at a time as U.S. forces have basically been defeating al-Qaeda and ISIS, and more than 10,000 troops have now been injected in just the last 2 days. So basically, there is a ground war ongoing right now. And what they're doing is cleaning out ISIS and al-Qaeda, pushing them back into Iraq to be defeated there in a pincer attack, and then also preparing to get Assad to negotiate a new interim government. That's basically what's unfolding. And quite frankly, it's a stroke of genius if it turns out to work. It's much better than the Hillary and Obama plan and the rest of it, where they actually launched the attacks to start the civil war. I don't like going and starting civil wars and toppling regimes, and that's wrong. The mess is there. It appears Trump is beginning to clean it up. And this may have even been an event where I guarantee you they've admittedly told the Russians they were about to strike the base. They've said that no casualties have been found yet, especially of Russians, which could have turned into an even bigger provocation. So I'm very, very pleased at this point that this was not a larger, widespread attack, and I hope that this is the beginning of the end of military action. And that's what Trump's now, through his surrogates, saying, is that this is meant to now broker some type of more serious peace deal in the area to bring this globalist stage civil war to an end. One important caveat to this analysis is the fact that, again, the communist Chinese dictator is now under the control of the United States at the Mar-a-Lago Estates in Florida, just arriving tonight, and then hours later, this takes place. This sends an incredible message to the communist Chinese about our determination and a lot more. And in this dangerous world, it is these type of messages and these type of skillfully carried out operations that telegraphs the strength and will of the United States. And as long as that's being done to promote freedom and liberty worldwide and restore our republic, I don't have a problem with it. But again, all of this remains to be seen. But it will silence a lot of critics that are using all this Russia-phobe garbage to kill our entire Americana rebirth agenda. But again, wait and see. There are many critical points, but another big one is the fact that several years ago, Assad agreed to give up his chemical weapons and hand them over to Russian control. Well, guess what? That was a base that the Russians had been controlling and stockpiling the chemicals at. So again, I wonder if via back channels, the agreement was made to, hey, just to prove we're not the ones doing the chemical weapons attacks, since you came up with this red line 4 years ago, go ahead and destroy these in place with your cruise missiles. I got a sneaking suspicion that's going to come out later. But again, tell us what you think. We'll be covering it more tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. with a syndicated daytime radio/TV show. But an hour before this even started, I put out a video report breaking down the fact that I was predicting tonight they would launch Tomahawk cruise missiles at least one target. Now, we'll see if this is a Machiavellian stroke of genius by Trump for the good, or whether he's been manipulated by the neocons towards a wider war. I'm not pleased by the fact that McCain seems to be celebrating, saying that now Washington's coming back to its normal order. If that's the case, it'll mean more globalism, more TPP, more open borders, more gun control, more attacks on Christians and families. Again, I'm very pleased with Trump's overall economic activities for the United States and some of the things he's done, like pulling us out of TPP. The fact that he immediately believed that this event was a real attack makes me question, but perhaps he's got intel we don't have. For now, I'll just watch and wait and continue to analyze the latest developments with our team of experts at Infowars.com. Please spread the word, because if you're watching or listening to this transmission, you are the resistance. As we speak, the White House has just released information that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Mattis, the head of the Defense Department, are in negotiations with Damascus, I guess, for Assad to basically give up power and leave. If that doesn't happen, the BBC and others are reporting that the White House has basically told them that strikes could come sometime tonight or tomorrow. Here's the problem. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and others 6 years ago started that war brought in the Al-Qaeda ISIS forces, and then branded it as a civil war. Our own military, 3.5 years ago, refused to be the Air Force of Al-Qaeda. Senator Rand Paul has come out and said, Trump, don't do this. We're going to bring Al-Qaeda in to a country that didn't even start a war. Syria hasn't attacked us. But remember, Obama had that red line on chemical gas. But then al-Nusra and other groups got caught launching the chemical attacks in false flags repeatedly. That's incontrovertible. But McCain goes there a month ago. He's been working with the Al-Qaeda/ISIS groups. I said, watch another nerve gas attacks coming. And sure enough, it's happened. Why would Assad, when he's winning the war, U.S. forces have almost cleaned out ISIS and Al-Qaeda, suddenly drop chemical weapons on a village so the United States and Donald Trump's red line can be crossed? That's suicidal. It's like you've just won the lottery and you burn the ticket up. But regardless, I've told you that when I think Trump's doing wrong, I'm going to criticize it. I love his domestic agenda, trying to get jobs back and cutting taxes and being anti-politically correct and fighting globalism. But if he gives in to this anti-Syria thing to prove he's not a Russian puppet, if he does that, they're not going to stop. They're already saying Syria is his fault, and Obamacare is his fault, and everything else is his fault. I think you feed the pirate. I think you pay off the pirate, it's going to get worse. MSM is going to attack even more. He'll be like George Herbert Walker Bush that had like a 80% approval rating or whatever from the Gulf War, and 6 months later had a 30%. They are setting Trump up. He can never appease them. They are always going to want to bring down that nationalist, because I know Trump's a good guy. He's meaned well, but he sees the news, these nerve gas kids, 30-something dead, 100 dead adults, and then kids on teleprompters going, we saw the planes, they came, they dropped the gas. Why would Assad do that when he's winning? When the whole time he's been told for 4 years, you use gas, we're going to overthrow you. Then Al-Qaeda/al-Nusra/ISIS can't stop celebrating when they're launching the big chemical mortars. And here's the big news. I was all for Trump taking out Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the middle of the country, pushing them out of Iraq as well. We're Syria and Iraq border. But I know that, well, it's been in the news, but major army units, and not just units, but whole divisions are being put into the country right now. The ground war has already basically begun. And this was in the news 3 or 4 days ago. Then the false flag comes on time. And Ron Paul says it's a false flag. I said it first. Our sources said it. Rand Paul's come out and pointed this out, and no one, conservatives, liberals, libertarians, are buying it. I just want to say to all the liberals out there, are you proud now? Obama tried this and we defeated it. And now I guess you get what you want with all your, TV shows and stuff about how great the white helmets are and how good the little rebels are fighting Assad. Assad was a reformer compared to Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia. And they're being taken over right now by Saudi Arabia and Wahhabists. And deals have been made with Erdogan to open Europe up to radical Islam. He's threatening Europe with jihad if they don't take more Muslims in. This is a total sellout. Our elites have sold out to radical Islam. Brennan set this deal up. He converted to Islam, Wahhabist, the Saudi Arabian version. And we were so double-crossed. And I know Trump's up there. He's done so much good. $3 trillion in the stock market, 300+ billion in new jobs, cutting off the carbon taxes, great things. And I know they're coming to Trump saying, listen, sir, the Russians are, been there for a long time, but, if we take Assad out now, we've beaten Al-Qaeda, we can then have a reform government, you can fix it. If not, sir, it'll look like you've, given the country over to Russians. Show everybody you're tough, let's do this. What happens if they start firing cruise missiles in an hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever, which they're saying they're getting ready to do? If the Syrians don't just give up. What happens then? You attack radar emplacements, you attack military bases, you attack airfields that are teamed with Russians. What happens there? So now it's brinksmanship. Our own military 4 years ago and 2 years ago told Obama no and blocked this because it was so suicidal and the Russians would fight back. It's their only deep water port in the Mediterranean. It's very close to Russia. They've been invited in. It's not like we're getting rid of Assad and putting in somebody good. We're putting in something 50 times worse. Our own military has said 95% of the rebels are Wahhabist Al-Qaeda/ISIS, same group. They just changed the name to confuse people. So this is a big moment. Trump with the Ryan healthcare that was better than Obamacare but still a screw job was like meant to fail. And I was like, what's Trump doing all of a sudden? And now this. And I know and look, you saw Bannon out yesterday. What'd that tell you? And Bannon does not want to do this thing in Syria. He knows where the grassroots are. He knows what needs to be done. Like, like Drudge said a month ago. You don't drain the swamp drains you. And is Trump way better than Hillary Clinton? Absolutely. But still, it's in the same footsteps, the exact same scam. I mean, it's like Ron Paul said 100% chance it's a false flag. I'm the one going, well, maybe 90% chance. I mean, this is insane. Is it to impress the communist Chinese dictator that just arrived that Trump's about to have dinner with? Is it to impress him? Probably. Maybe they're not going to attack, but they're basically saying all options are on the table. We've got to do something because of Assad. Trump is a good guy, but President 45, you know the globalists that control the big brass and people, you know they're going to end up, accidentally shutting down the moderate rebels, and it's going to be an Al-Qaeda base. That's what Saudi Arabia wants. And I guess the argument's cut off Iran, double-cross them. A bunch of Christians are being murdered. It's wrong. Making Libya be a failed state was wrong. And I saw on CNN's front page, it's there right now, Hillary in this gold outfit. And it's like, what would Hillary do? Like, she's back and she said, I told everybody we need airstrikes and we need to do this. She's all high and mighty. She's the one 6 years ago that honchoed, that drove, that quarterbacked, that masterminded and bragged about it. This whole civil war they started, shipping in all these Wahhabist armies who were just there to take land like pilgrims, who are there just rolling in to a moderate Muslim country and just wrecking it. The second oldest Christian country in the world. It's devastating. And now the Islamists will have that army into Syria and then into Turkey as a pathway for Erdogan to flood Europe. Wow, we're really being betrayed. I used to hear Lynn Horowitz, people, talk about the globalists putting cancer viruses in the vaccines and stuff. I didn't believe it until I read the documents. And I used to see other people sit there and talk about how we're going to be turned over to the radical Islamicists. That's David Horowitz, other Horowitz. I didn't believe it. And I used to see people like, just countless others warn about this. And you can see the double cross going on. You can see all of it unfolding in live time, the destabilization of the world. And it hurts my heart. And then again, North Korea is horrible. Crazy little fat man, like John McCain said. That's finally McCain said something true. Our government under the Clintons gave them the reactors to create the fissile material. I was covering it in 1996 on the air. It was all over the news. It's not my opinion. But it's like, I have a memory, so I'm a weirdo. I remember 4 years ago the Red Line, and 3 years ago, Assad supposedly launching it, and then it coming out that Al-Qaeda and ISIS ran it because they were doing videos of them shooting the mortars off. And now, boom, gas attack happens yesterday. Boom, they have a few kids on TV saying they saw planes and bombs. Boom, it's absolute proof we got to go in now. I got to say, Rand Paul is absolutely towering, defeating the watered down repeal of Obamacare and this as well. I know they're telling Trump, look strong, Sam's to Russia, this whole Russia thing will be over, whatever. I like the domestic agenda. And I'm not going to cry over Assad getting kicked out, but let me tell you, it's evil to sit there and let all those Al-Qaeda people take over that country, and it's going to happen. That's the vacuum. They border Iraq. Just as sure as the sun came up this morning, I'm going to report the truth about what happens if all this goes south. And again, the big question, I'm going to close with this. The Russians have said if they get locked on target, if missiles come into that airspace, because just until a few days ago, they were, for months, working with the U.S. military to take out ISIS strong points. But see, now that ISIS is being defeated, now, let's get rid of Assad, have regime change. Which is more moral than Obama trying to turn the country over to ISIS. I get it. So that's Trump's argument is, okay, we've defeated Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They're almost defeated. We're pushing them into Iraq. Iraq's pushing them in from the east. They're pushing them into the west in what was Islamic State that was part of Syria and part of Iraq right there. Here's Syria, here's Iraq, here's Saudi Arabia, here's Jordan, Israel, all that. I mean, I see the grand chessboard. I understand the Machiavellian moves. But end doesn't justify the means, because every analyst that looks at it says this vacuum is going to have it be a failed state forever, probably split in three pieces. And then with all these corridors of terrorism, with Kurdistan up here and this Sunni state here and a Shiite state here, it's just incredibly evil to know that Hillary started it all with Obama, and now we've got to see our media clearly with a false flag selling all this, and then Trump about to complete it. all because of a stupid false flag. And of course, Trump doesn't want to sit there and say, oh, it may be a false flag. Well, you said the Jewish centers getting attacked was false. Turned out it was a false flag. And you said so many other things that have been turned out to be true. So just restoring our republic and defending our borders and moving to cut our taxes is great stuff. But I tell you, the listeners are just almost overwhelmingly freaked out. And I know the calculus is, well, the Tea Party's too powerful, kind of break it up and control the liberals too. No, it's all meant to continue globalism. But here's the deal, whether it's Brexit or what's happening with the breakup of the EU, or what's happening with people wanting nationalism in Brazil, the New World Order's going down. And Donald Trump rode in on the big wave and said all the right things and did a lot of good things. But I'll tell you this, nothing's going to stop human self-determination and liberty. And I'm not going to back down, and I'm not going to falter, and I'm not going to go sideways. I'm not going to waver. I'm going to tell the truth to the end at Infowars.com. We'll know a lot more tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, Infowars.com. I'll be co-hosting with David Knight, special reports, a lot of big guests tomorrow. Huge things happening behind the scenes. But really, the American people have let the globalists, the neocons, come in and bully Trump, come in and push all their crap, and he's got a bunch of cowards around him in the Republican Party. So I'm surprised he got this much done. But he doesn't want to look weak. Like, I wouldn't let him cross a red line of chemical weapons. But you know, and your own advisor, General Flynn, told you it was a false flag. The UN admitted it. So how is it, again, real this time? That's where I stand on this. And again, what happens if they kill Russians and the Russians respond? We could wake up in the middle of the night, nuclear war going on. And I know the 70 years of nuclear weapons or atomic weapons, no one wants to believe it can happen. Kind of like getting cancer can't happen until you get it, or having a car wreck can't happen until you get it, or getting diabetes doesn't happen until you get it, or having your liver fail doesn't happen until you happen to happen. This is the stuff of disaster written all over it. Just how world wars began. These crises in the Middle East, global financial crises, China, the South China Sea, South Korea threatening to attack everybody. Top generals saying maybe attacking North Korea is the only option now. China threatening, all this stuff's going on. And Trump said we need to work with Russia and try to fix the problem there in Syria. And Russia's not expanding. It's not starting World War III. China's bad. North Korea's bad. And our globalist, neocon, and democratic leaders are just scum of the earth. They're all calling for war with Russia, and Nancy Pelosi doesn't even know what planet she's on. All the videos of Maxine Waters thinks that Russia invaded Korea, doesn't even know there's a north or south. Just it's like saying the Martians invaded. And I'm not against Russia, but I've never been there. I've studied it historically. The thing is, Russia's not doing anything. But it's all this litmus test. Do what we say politically, or you're a Russian agent. So have World War III, or you're a Russian agent. Okay, whatever. Let's debate it here. We're about to go from being live to archive. Let's spread this video to everybody, because you go to Infowars.com. We've got all the BBC articles, CNN, you name it. They are salivating that they believe they're breaking Trump. I remember reading articles when he was president-elect. International crises in Korea and Syria, they'll show him what's going to happen. And I said a month ago, watch, there's going to be another chemical attack. John McCain just left. They've done a bunch of these fake chemical attacks. They've been caught doing it. My God, they've been caught doing it. And still they do it again like we don't remember. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have happened, but I almost wish it was real if it did happen. That actually Assad did it, which is suicidal for him and crazy, because it'd be okay to just get rid of him and do something. But I know that's not the case. The globalists want to overthrow Syria because it was a stabilizing effect, just like Iraq or anywhere else. It's so cold-blooded. Just like they're destabilizing our families and our economy here, and shutting off our power and putting us under globalism. Globalists are anti-human. They're unelected. They're evil. And just 4 years ago, the UK voted to not be part of the Syrian war with Obama, because it was known we were going to put very evil rebels in there and let them butcher that whole country. And now 4 years later, we're on the brink of war with Russia because of this. I guess to show off to China. Any way you slice it, it's bad. We shouldn't be involved in it. We shouldn't have had Hillary and Obama destabilize the country to begin with, and have all these failed states, and overthrow our ally Egypt, and overthrow North African countries like Libya. And now you see Hillary rising up out of a rat hole, out of a sewage duct, to lecture everybody about, I told you Trump didn't do enough, attack. I came, I saw, he died, when she's the admitted author of all of it. And the left just ignorantly celebrates war and death and anti-free speech and just calls for the arrest of libertarians and calls for the death of Trump and just celebrates. And it's almost like, I guess, nuclear war is what's supposed to happen to us. All these ingrates, all this trash, all these warmongers, I guess they just want to be cleansed by thermonuclear fire. I was saying, if China is about to attack us and they're about to launch missiles if we hit North Korea, we'll have to total commit and take them out first, or the nuclear war will destroy the planet. And the media said, I want nuclear war. I said, no, the strategy is a first strike if we think China's about to hit, and so that's the only option if Trump keeps going down this road. And I get it. He's got Kim Jong-un to deal with, who Obama helped, but Bill Clinton gave the reactors to for the damn atomic weapons, for the materials. The fissile material. I mean, I've studied every aspect of this. And it's just like everything goes back to the globalists sowing evil. North Korea, Islamic Jihad, just every form of evil to destabilize the world so they can play the part of the saviors and take our freedoms. The whole global system is a stage crisis in their own words. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. Rahm Emanuel. If the crisis gets too big, Rahm, you won't be the Don of Chicago anymore, man. Got that, psychopath? Infowars.com/show. They're censoring us more and more because they know we won't compromise. Spread that link to everybody you know, and please spread this video. Let's pray tonight nuclear war doesn't break out, because every major analyst say North Korea and Syria are the major triggers. And let's pray President Donald John Trump knows what he's doing.
Okay, so you just saw those two clips from InfoWars with Alex Jones, and I thought he did a pretty good job of putting it all in perspective. So we have to consider that we are now in a new phase of the presidency of Donald Trump. We're now at the point where Donald Trump has demonstrated his resolution that he can commit to a military force when necessary, when he considers it necessary. This is sort of an initiation, or something that most American presidents, or all American presidents, have to do. This silences their critics. This has the effect of allowing him to sort of spread his wings as the president and be known as the strong leader who will take decisive action when necessary. And this is reassuring for many people in the political community, for the general American public. And this is probably a very different action than what Hillary Clinton would have taken if she had been president. Now, this is one of the main reasons why I supported Donald Trump in the first place. And that was because Hillary Clinton, when she was running, on numerous occasions, stated very clearly and succinctly that she would impose a no-fly zone on Syria as soon as she became president. And what this does, you talk about a provocation, this is a major slap in the face to Russia, because Russia has lots of personnel in Syria. And what a no-fly zone means, it sounds maybe sort of harmless, but actually a no-fly zone, you take out all the air defenses, you bomb the air bases, you take out any ability for that country to defend itself against air attack. And how do I know this? Because this is exactly what happened in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq. The no-fly zone across the entire country of Iraq was instituted, put in place, and then everything was taken out, all the defenses, and then the invasion began. And this is what probably Hillary Clinton was planning to do. The next step would be the invasion. And Russia stated in no uncertain terms that if this were to take place, Russia would protect its servicemen on the ground in Syria. And also, Russian Air Force has been in the airspace of Syria for years fighting ISIS. They're bombing ISIS. They're all over the place. And as soon as there was a confrontation and one of those Russian airplanes was shot down, that is an act of war, and you might have again had a scenario in which you have war with, the United States has war with Russia. And I don't think anybody wants that, except for certain very belligerent neocon or neoliberal types in Washington, D.C., and around the world, not just the United States. Some countries would love to see the United States and Russia duke it out and be decimated and just essentially destroyed. Countries like China, countries like North Korea, maybe even Saudi Arabia, other very ambitious countries that would like to be top dog on planet Earth. And that's really what a lot of this is about full spectrum dominance of the planet, retaining and expanding and securing the empire for that particular country that they have stolen and bought for themselves over the various decades and centuries. And America is no exception to that rule of thumb that countries, particularly young countries, are ambitious and want to dominate the planet. And this is just the way human beings have behaved toward each other ever since human beings were probably walking on the planet. They have been an extremely aggressive, belligerent, warlike species who don't seem to thrive on peace. They don't even understand the idea of peace. And there's just, and their leadership requires war in order to feel secure in their positions of power. They require an enemy, and I've talked about this before. Never was the American security agencies, the intelligence services, the military-industrial complex more frightened than in 1989 through 1991 when the Soviet Union fell and the communist threat was no longer in evidence. That frightened them more than anything. They were quite happy with the situation all throughout the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s of the Cold War. This allowed them to develop their weapons, allowed them to maintain their high levels of government funding for all their programs, and you name it, from the average soldier on the ground to the nuclear submarine to the development of all kinds of high-tech weaponry for use in space-based weapons, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when the Soviet Union actually finally gave up the ghost and just evaporated forever, you have a situation in which there is the potential for world peace. And this is the last thing that the military-industrial complex wants. And this is the last thing that leadership on both sides, not only Russia, but also the United States and many, many other countries around the world, thrive on war. Even the banks, even a place like Switzerland, benefits from other countries going to war and borrowing money from its banks. And the very wealthiest people on the planet benefit from lending money, and it secures their power, because as long as the people of the world are fighting each other, and the bad guy, and each side must have its bad guy, is the focus of their attention, then the people of the world will not focus their attention on the true bad guys, the true power brokers, the true puppet masters, the shadow government, the global government that is truly owning the planet and running the show and killing millions or billions and has tremendous plans for the future of this planet that we don't know about. Most Americans, most people on the planet do not know about the plans for planet Earth that are being formulated, and it's the long-term goals. We're talking 100 years, 200-year plan to secure and expand the power of a very small group of men at the very top. You know, is the group as small as 10 men, 20 men, 60? There are different numbers that are thrown out there about that, how many men actually run and own planet Earth. If you include their families, it's probably a few thousand people who own planet Earth. But essentially, it's just an extremely small group of men. And if those men were ever identified and brought to justice and dragged up before The Hague, the International Court, let's say, for their crimes, then it would all be over for them. If people knew what they were doing, what they have been doing for centuries, and their fathers before them, and their grandfathers, and their great-grandfathers before them, in order to get to the place where they are today, in which they're worth trillions of dollars. It is a laughable joke to think that somebody who's a second-string billionaire like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or any of these other, like the guy down in Mexico who's worth I don't know how many $1 billion, and several others, that these guys are the world's richest men, when the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are not even mentioned in that group. It's comical. Sir Evelyn de Rothschild is arguably worth, I don't know, who knows, 10, 20, 50, 100. I mean, we're talking in the trillions here, not the billions, but the trillions. And this is truly evidence that they own the planet once you start talking in the trillions. And the Rothschilds have taken their names off their banks, off all their holdings. In fact, you never hear or see the word mentioned on television, on the mainstream radio or television or internet. Only in the alternative sites are those names ever mentioned, the Rothschild family ever mentioned. It's as if they have wiped themselves off and out of the consciousness of the people of planet Earth. And that just shows how much power they actually have. That's an indication of how much power they actually have, that they can take their name out of the limelight and just reduce it to nothingness. They can destroy the name. The name just vanishes from people's minds. And I like to tell a story of the economist that I talked to, who taught college for decades. I mentioned the name Rothschild from him and to him, and he said, "Wow, it's been a long time since I've heard that name." Which means, it goes without saying, that he taught economics, but never once mentioned the Rothschilds. Even though, I mean, they virtually invented modern banking hundreds of years ago. They had the biggest coup, probably in history, the financial coup in the City of London at the conclusion of the Napoleonic Wars, the Battle of Waterloo, when the Rothschild agents, the Rothschild, who was the leader of the family at that time, had a whole network of agents, very fast-moving network. Because in those days, this is before telegraph, this is in the early 19th century. Like the Battle of Waterloo was something like 1814 or something. And so the only way was a fast horse. That was the fastest way to get message from one place to another. And he had an agent watching the Battle of Waterloo, and he saw that Napoleon lost. And the agent got on his horse and just rode that horse as hard as he could. And they probably had a string of agents, and got that, and the message was passed from one agent to another until that message was handed to, I believe his name was Nathan Rothschild, in the stock market in the City of London. This would be the financial hub of the world, of the Western world. And he was given that message. He opens the message, doesn't show it to anyone. And he probably pretended that he looked really sad, oh no, And then he starts immediately selling. Selling. Why would you sell? Why would you sell your stocks? Only if the message read that the Battle of Waterloo had been lost by Wellington and Napoleon had won, because that would mean the stock market would go down. All the other traders are watching what Rothschild is doing, and they begin to sell because they're saying, well, obviously, the Battle of Waterloo has been lost. Napoleon will stay in power. He will continue to run roughshod over Europe. Stability is gone. No stability. See, stock markets thrive in stable political situations. And because people are encouraged, it's about belief in the system, that the system will support and continue to grow, and that therefore it's worth investing in. So when you start selling your investments, that means you've lost faith that the system is stable. So the other traders start to sell. Now what they don't notice is that behind the scenes, Rothschild has his own stockbrokers, and they are buying up these, what happens is that the stock market crashes. As soon as everybody starts to sell, it crashes. The price of everything starts to go down. The more it goes down, the more people get afraid and they start selling, and they start selling at reduced prices. So behind the scenes, while Rothschild is selling, his agents are buying, and they're buying at rock bottom prices. Fire sale prices, pennies on the dollar, or on the pound, pennies on the pound, I guess you could say. And then, here's the kicker. The next messenger comes in, not the Rothschild messenger, but the messenger who tells who gives everyone the news. And he announces with wonderful joy that Wellington won, that Napoleon has been defeated at Waterloo. Napoleon is no more. Suddenly, everyone is thrilled. It's victory. Stability is restored. The stock market is restored. It immediately starts to go up. It goes to new highs. And suddenly, everyone realizes that Rothschild now owns everything and has bought up everything in sight and virtually owns England and Europe. And he bought them at a rock bottom price. And now it's the value has shot up, and he's made untold amounts of money. He became a billionaire. I guess maybe the world's first billionaire. And the Rothschild family has been on top ever since. I mean, he was already, hugely powerful even before this incredible coup and this deception, which essentially stole billions of pounds of the world's assets, the world's wealth through deception. How, you might say what a clever move that was. And yeah, sure, it's a clever move if you're willing to stoop that low and do that to your fellow men to gain power and control of the world's assets. So, fast forward to 2017, and the same mindset of the human being is in play. The same way of thinking, of getting one over on your fellow. And so this is something we have to deal with. We have to understand, we have to take that into account when we consider human nature. I do think that there is a lot more to human nature than that humans do have a connection to the divine, that we are an amalgamation of the earthly and the divine, and we have both in us, and that we can listen to our better natures, our higher natures, and see that we don't need to do this kind of thing in order to thrive and feel contentment and fulfillment and happiness as a human being, and essentially have our dreams come true. And this is the great failing of the aristocratic classes. This is their biggest weakness. This is where they fail as human beings, because they feel that they have to do this in order to fulfill their dreams. And greed is running their life. That's what their major motivation is. And greed has no limitations. Once you have a lot, you always want more. You're never satisfied because it never fulfills you. What you're looking for, by its very nature, cannot fulfill you. You cannot acquire stuff and find peace and contentment and what it is you're looking for in your life. There is so much that human beings should be doing but are not doing that is sad to see how people are forced to respond to circumstances, on a day-to-day basis. They cannot function fully as human beings because we're constantly being bombarded with a false narrative, a skewed narrative, a perverted narrative, a narrative that is meant by its very nature to cause destabilization, unhappiness, fear, terror, and this just is not the way that the world was meant to be. This is not how human beings are supposed to be. And you might just say, well, let's just turn our back on all this. But you can't really do that either. You can't just forget about it. You have to address it at some point, and you have to be able to understand and know what's going on, because otherwise you just become an ignorant victim. I mean, ignorance truly is the reason why we have wars. People think there's not enough in the world to sustain human beings. There have been studies that have shown that the Earth, the planet Earth, has the capability of sustaining all human beings and all the land, animals, and everything. It's all possible. There is so much fecundity, that is fertility, that is available. There's so much land that's available. There's so many opportunities that could happen if people were allowed to function the way that human beings really were created or evolved to function. If they were able to see that we live in a planet of almost infinite resources. A lot of food is grown on this planet. Much of it is simply wasted. And so it's not a matter of not having enough food. It's the greed, the ignorance, the just sheer stupidity of human beings that prevents us from living together peacefully as a species. And, it's sad. It's sad that it's like that. But this is the history of the human race, as far as we know. I mean, there's plenty of evidence to show that this is not the first civilization that's fallen completely over the long, long history of the human race. Humans have been around for, 1 million years? And there's a lot of evidence to show that we may have had a hugely, highly technical civilization before that, for one reason or the other, almost virtually completely vanished. So that's all there is for today. Have a great weekend and sleep well.